Hey everybody, this is Mike, and you're watching the Reelblack podcast. And today we've got a great guest for you. He is the creator of the new podcast series, The Seeds of the Black Lily, Mr. Stanley J. Collins. How you doing there, Stanley?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, full disclosure, I'm one of the featured guests in episode 4. But for those who don't know yet, please let people know exactly what is the Seeds of Black Lily.
Yeah, so the Seeds of Black Lily is a four-part audio documentary series highlighting the Black Lily Women in Music series, which was um, broadly an open mic that took place in Philadelphia from about 1999 into the mid early 2000s. And so it's part honoring them in that legacy and thinking about more broadly Black music in Philadelphia around the turn of the century.
Now you're a pretty young guy. I mean, what was your first introduction to the artist of the Black Lily?
Yeah, so for me, I play guitar and grew up playing guitar in church, and a lot of the musicians who passed through the Black Lily, I would like run into kind of like around the city, and those were a lot of people that I looked up to. So, I guess as you mentioned, I never went to the Black Lily, but kind of
Were you even
retroactive.
born?
Yeah, I was alive, but not hardly thinking about music in that
Okay.
way.
hmm So what led you to want to do this series?
Yeah, so part of it was I applied for a grant from Rec Philly, which is like an arts nonprofit in the city, and essentially they were looking for projects on highlighting some part of Philadelphia's Black music history. And when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this sounds great. What am I going to talk about?" And I kind of like worked through a couple different ideas, and then finally landed on Black Lily. And I thought it would be cool because through Black Lily, I could talk about so many other parts of Philadelphia's Black music history. So it really became like a conduit to talk about like gospel music in the city, house music, um, you know, neo soul, all these different genres. So what led me to do the project was, there was a grant out there and I applied for it and was one of the grantees, I guess, or awardees. And that's what helped kind of like finance it as well. But yeah, that's kind of how I decided to do it.
Well, I think that you did a great job. You know, I was impressed or surprised by I was one of the people that video documented a lot of the Black Lily artists at the time, but I didn't know their backstories. So I appreciate the fact that you talked to so many of them and got their story of what Philly was like before the Black Lily started. It wasn't just and there's a lot of different perspectives. It's almost like a Rashomon, but it all leads into the same filter or well called Black Lily. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So, first, thank you for you and Daryl DeBrest for even, just recording it. Because uh, when Black Lily was happening, this is pre everybody has a phone in their pocket with, a moderately like decent camera. So the footage that does exist of Black Lily is because of you all, and which is why I thought it was so important to include you. Um, but thinking about the period leading up to Black Lily in episode 3, Stephanie Renee and River set the stage incredibly well. So River, who was the host of Black Lily, she talked about the experience of being a spoken word artist, and also just being like young and Black in Philadelphia in the 90s, what that felt like, how oftentimes it was difficult for groups of Black kids, artists in general, to like just get together and gather. Um, there's also the part where Stephanie Renee gives some great context and talks about, as a poet and an artist, like what it was like to be in the city, and how a lot of the venues at the time were kind of like they weren't willing to offer their space unless they knew there was, a great return financially. And so how artists were kind of just making their way. She talked about the influence of Love Jones, which I had not considered prior to doing this. But there was, I think, a sensibility during that time in the mid 90s where, particularly for young Black folks, maybe recent college graduates, or around that age, this idea of, or an interest in the arts, specifically like live music and spoken word. And they both give like really great perspective. And they talk about like Unity Day and how important that was, which WDAS hosted in the city, and how all of these things were so important, and it really set the stage for when Black Lily would officially kind of launch right in the year 2000.
Right. And also you talked to Tiffany Bacon. Well, Stephanie Renee, my former co-host at WRD Real Black Radio. Shout out to her. Shout out to Dee River Parker. Who are the other guests that are part of this experience?
Yeah, so in that episode in particular, we worked through D River Park or River and Stephanie Renee. They kind of set the stage, and then the Jazzy Fat Nasty. So Tracy Moore, Mercedes Martinez, they were so gracious enough to share their story and just how they even ended up in Philadelphia, which is an interesting story in itself. But coming to Philadelphia, and essentially they were going to open mics, and they noticed that a lot of the women were being passed over on the sign-in sheet, or when they were allowed to perform, they could only effectively like do like the hook of a song in between like a guy rapping. And so they were like, we want to offer a space for women to be able to get out full thoughts. And they tell that story, and the advice they received from their manager, Richard Nichols, and essentially said, look, you got promotion money from for your album, but instead of just trying to do a couple dates up and down the East Coast, why don't we take that money and put it into one place? And so in a lot of ways, that's how Black Lily was birthed. And then Lady Alma, who's was a staple at Black Lily and is incredibly she's a legend, right? She's a legend to the Philadelphia music scene, but also we think about the type of music she engaged with. We think about like house music and that long history of like disco and dance music in its relation to Black people. There's also a couple of professors, Dr. Claudrina Harold, who's the chair of the history department at the University of Virginia. She writes and has written a lot about like Black music history. She went to Temple, so she was like in the city when a lot of this stuff was happening. But she offers some really great context in thinking about Gamble and Huff and their influence on the city, and what that what it meant for a lot of the people who were at Black Lily to kind of grow up through that era. Dr. Philip Lamar Cunningham, who he is a professor of media studies, but he wrote an article in Neo Soul. And ironically, like there's not a lot of, writing out there on Neo Soul, besides like the articles that may have come out during that time period, but not a lot of people taking like this macro look. He's a part of the series. Keith Pelzer, who's a producer, who's a part of A Touch of Jazz with Jazzy Jeff, and helped co-write a bunch of songs, but in particular, He Loves Me by Jill Scott. And he told that story about, it's a great story. It's in episode 2. Effectively was like talk music in church for his dad, who was the pastor, kind of played this progression. He loved it, went to the studio. Jill was like, oh, what's this? And, He Loves Me is birth.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent that came through that stage, and Philadelphia in particular at that time. I mean, were there any surprises to you as you were doing this research, or?
Yeah, I didn't really know too much about the context of the city leading up to Black Lily opening, and how, which I was so grateful for from Riva and Stephanie Renee for kind of like explaining what it was like to be in the city in that moment. I thought that was like really interesting and something that I really hadn't known. And you know, I mentioned Love Jones, but like I didn't realize like how maybe important that movie was. Having not
Oh,
really,
to
you know, like
Stephanie. To Stephanie.
yeah, sure, okay,
We'll call her. That's her favorite movie, I think. So,
sure.
so. But I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah, I think that was something that I really hadn't necessarily considered, and I think you know the title of it and is the Seeds of Black Lily, and I entitled the last episode genealogy because what I wanted to take, well, what I wanted to come from the series was to think about how influential and important that moment was. Not just like in that moment, but like we can still see and feel a lot of that. Um, the people that came through there, like somebody like Robert Glasper, he's not a part of the series, but in an official capacity. But he I remember going to a concert and when he came to Philly and he talked about how he and Bilal would get on the mega bus or, you know, whatever bus to come down from New York just to go to Black Lily and how important Black Lily was to his sound. And so now I think about somebody like him who's, you know, he's scoring movies and TV shows and, you know, he's everywhere. And it's like a big part of his sound comes from what happened, you know, in this small room with the low ceiling.
That's
Uh,
true.
oh, drop phone. Yeah, like it all comes from there, and so many different artists, and how important that
It's
genealogy is.
it's true. It's not just the artists that were in front, but a lot of the background musicians are still working and creating music, and a big part of the popular music landscape. You know, if the biggest highlight besides the Roots winning a Grammy uh, would be for me Michael Jackson coming to not he didn't come to Philadelphia, but you know, tapping Floetry, Marsha Ambrosius to record Butterflies, and how that was a big moment, like the biggest artist in the world recording a song by a Black Lily artist. I think it was phenomenal. And then you see what people like Adam Blackstone is doing as a musical director. You know, he was a bass player for the Jazzy Fat Nasties, and it's featured in the documentary that I made. And now it's hard to see any award performance or big tour without Adam at bass on bass playing. So yeah, I mean, the roots run deep for sure. I mean, and I guess it's no mistake that the roots would be such a big part of Black Lily. Yeah, the episode 4, the one that I'm in, you also talked to Angela Nissel, and she dropped some jewels that I wasn't really familiar with. I mean, I met Angela a few times, but I never really had a chance to talk to her. What did you learn from her?
Yeah, so with Angela, you know, I just like reached out on a whim, on like, and you know, wanted to talk to her. So she co-founded OK Player with Questlove. Um, you know, basically like, you know, it's 1999 and the internet isn't what we know it to be now, for better or for worse. And she was really good with just explaining like what it was like to be on the internet in, you know, 1999 and, you know, running this message board and kind of having like, she's a comedy or TV writer, specifically for comedy. And she told some like really incredible stories about like, you know, being on the message board and um having these like OK Player group meetups. And she even told a story about Aaron Magruder and how he was kind of like a part of that OK Player ecosystem. And they would like show some of his comics on on the homepage. And I believe it was before like the Boondocks kind of like, you know, uh was even like, or before he was like known for the Boondocks, but like some of his cartoons were like on the page. So I think that was another really interesting element that kind of came from this era.
Can you speak on the connection between the roots and the Jazzy Fat Nasties a little
Yeah,
more?
so that story is really interesting. Tracy and Mercedes really tell that story about effectively they did a demo, and they went to a Roots show. I think it was somewhere in Southern California. I can't remember the city. But effectively, they went to the show and they were like, "Wow, we need this. We love this." And essentially, they had their demo, already done, and they see like Questlove or something in the backstage, in like the hallway, and he already has their demo. So he like already knows, and so they eventually come out to Philly, um, and they work with Rich Nichols, who was the Roots manager, and they kind of like go through kind of like bit of like a performance school, if you will, or artistry school. And so yeah, I believe they were on or share like label mates at one point, um, with the Roots. But yeah, they're the legacy, I think, of the Jazzy Fat Nasties, and which what I really wanted to bring out and hope to shed light on was just how important they were, in their story, and hearing about like their upbringing, and some of the music that inspired them and the music that they made, because I think they're a really important group, in the history of, and in Philadelphia's music history, but also just like Black music in general. A really important group, and so much of the work that they did again helped set the stage for many other artists.
No, I completely agree. You also talked to Lady Alma.
Yeah.
What gems does she offer in this podcast?
Yeah, Lady Alma was great. So Lady Alma, and she's a part of that same episode 3, looking, directly at Black Lily. Lady Alma was great, and one of the things that I thought was interesting about her, especially when you look at a lot of the different artists that performed at Black Lily, was that Lady Alma is like heavily entrenched, like she a part of like the community of house music, right? Which, is a bit of an outgrow or an extension of disco, in music heard in the late 70s, and early 80s. And she made some like really great connections between like house music and like gospel. And part of what another goal of it was to not think about all of these genres necessarily in terms of like genre, but in terms of like extensions of each other. And what I thought was so interesting about Lady Alma was she was like, when we look at the performers, she stands out in a lot of ways because she was one of the only people, at least from what I could see, that was really like a part of or continuing and practicing in the like house music tradition. So I thought that was like really interesting. And she talked about her connection with house music and some of the music that she's made. And even the film that you made, the concert film, Lady Alma Live at the Black Lily, I believe 2002 or 2003, which was really important to include in the series as well, because I think again she was doing something that was a little bit different, from some of the other performers.
Yeah, that's a fun video. It's on YouTube. It gives people a sense of what it was like to catch a set at the Black Lily. And I think it's we have two different tapes. The one that's up on YouTube is a different tape than the show that we used from A Taste of Lady Alma, which I think has a little bit better audio quality. But she's the best, and it's amazing to see. She took time off to help take care of her mother, uh, her ailing mother, for a few years. But then she came back, and she's bigger than ever. I think she's
Yeah.
still killing it. She just did a show here in Philly that sold out, on a rooftop, and then she's big overseas because of this viral video that she did, or somebody filmed someone singing along to one of her songs in Africa of all places. So now
Hmm.
she was already an international star, but this clip has millions of views. It's amazing, but it just shows that the talent never dies.
Hmm.
The talent always stays there. So I mean, in terms of and we should not fail to mention some of the other artists that came through
Yes.
Black Lily. I don't know if you want to talk about the legacy of Black Lily, or what stands as far
Yeah.
as today's artists or artists that came through there.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the list is, it's like looking back, like it's remarkable to think that all of these people were in the same place at the same time. But yeah, goodness. So Kindred the Family Soul, uh Jaguar Wright, uh Flowetry, a young, everybody tells a story about Jasmine Sullivan being like, I've heard a range of ages, but anywhere from like 12 to 14 when she like first showed up and blew everybody away. Um Goodness, I don't want to leave anybody out. Well, obviously Music Soul Child, Bilal, Aries. Goodness, am I missing anyone? Uh
Well, it was primarily a woman's group,
yeah,
so I think he covered everybody: Kindred, Jasmine, Jaguar, Jazzy's, um, New Ra.
Nura, yes.
That's about it. Those were the regulars when I was going. But
Mhm.
yeah, it is hard to believe that so much talent came through um, as a result of this kind of thing. Did Mercedes talk about Rich Nichols at all?
Yeah, a bit. Just talked about his influence and how
Because he
important he
was
was.
he was sort of the visionary, I feel, for
Yeah.
a lot of this, a lot of what we're seeing, even to this day. Like, even with the Roots as a house band on Jimmy Fallon, he helped convince them of that, and just a pure visionary in terms of what Black Lily was. So
Yeah, and even Jazzy Fat Nasties in Process, the film you did, I think, like, I believe it opens with him kind of like saying, talking about like the state of the artist. And this is what, like around 2001, 2002 ish.
mhm.
And he's talking about like the world and the nature in which the artist exists in, but also um the often difficult decisions that have to be made in like kind of like industry politics, for lack of a better way of putting it, that often takes place, and how an artist has to like be able to, unfortunately, have to work through those things. So yeah, she did, her and Tracy did talk about, it was very much his idea to say like, look, let's not try to spread this money thin across four spots, but let's kind of like put it into one place. And I think one of the things that I saw kind of like going through everyone's story is this idea of thinking both about themselves but beyond themselves and about other people, and this idea of like community really being a theme running through all of the guests.
So I ask, in closing, what do you think that something like that could happen again in this generation or future generations? A because Black Lily was sort of a perfect storm for its era. Do you think
Right.
something like that can happen again? Is it happening? Is it happening here in Philly? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've 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 thought about this, and I think it is happening, but maybe not with music. I really do think that it's fresh in my mind because Black Star Film Festival was a week ago. But I really do think that that is like, in 20 years we'll look back at Black Star or something, like, and it just feels so. It's like I was watching some of the films and it's like unbelievably good, and I think about even, I mean, podcast being named The Seeds of Black Lily. I think um Black Star Film Festival is in a lot of ways kind of like an extension of Black Lily, and kind of like growing out of that Black Lily Music and Film Festival.
Hmm.
So I think it's happening. But I think maybe just in a different medium.
Very, very well put. Okay, well, we'll close out the episode with a clip. What do you want to see, Mr. DJ Stanley,
Yeah.
out of
Oh,
the Real Black Vault? Who should we look at?
Oh, the vault. That's nice. Okay. Things that are on YouTube currently.
We'll play some. Well, an artist. Maybe
All right.
we'll dig something out rare.
All right. I'd love anything Kindred at Black Lily. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Okay. Well, how about I plug the Kindred, the Family Soul, the TLA by showing a clip.
Yeah, sure.
There.
That works too.
So we'll wind it up with Kindred, the Family Soul, who's a Black Lily alumni, and their concert film, which was never seen before, recently in its entirety on YouTube. We'll show a clip from there right now.
I'm watching you from afar, babe. You're heaven's brightest star, baby. Oh, and wanting you is exciting me. Damn, I forgot the words. Oh!
You bad girl. Yo, Jewel, give me a little something. Drop that. Hey, hey, hey. Everybody now. Hey, 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 hey. Everybody now. Hey, 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 hey. Everybody now. Hey, 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 hey. Just come with us like, oh. Check it out now.
I'm watching you from afar, baby. The heaven's brightest star, baby. Wanting you is exciting. If only in my head, and if I was hungry, I'd take you instead. Oh, you know we speak with no tongue, baby. You smell your walk, baby. So afraid to touch you, but I long for it so hot. I'm sure that I love you, but you don't even know. Beauty and music, the angels singing a song. Do you hear that? It's so lovely, it's magic. I know you can feel the same, yeah. Oh, 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 oh,
Check it out, Joe. Check it out, Joe. Loving you is a dance. The rhythm of life.
and if there's a chance, I want you till I die.
Loving you's a dance.
The rhythm of life,
And if there's a chance, I want you till I die. Hey, hey, die, baby, die, baby,
I'm watching you from afar, babe. The heaven's brightest star, baby. Wanting to is exciting. If only in my head, and if I was hungry, I'd take you instead.
You can take me, baby.
You know we speak with no tongue, baby. You smell your walk, baby. So afraid to touch you.
Don't be afraid, girl.
But I long for it so hot. I'm sure that I love you, but you don't even know.